We all want to be smarter. But what if I told you that the biggest thing holding you back isn't something you don't know? What if it's the little habits you do every single day, completely on autopilot? So, let me just ask you straight up. Could your daily habits be secretly making you a less effective thinker? And look, this isn't about your IQ score. This is about the quality of your thinking, your ability to adapt, and your actual capacity to learn. Because here's the key idea we've got to get our heads around. Intelligence isn't fixed. It is not carved in stone. It's much more like a muscle. And just like a muscle, it can get weaker if we let ourselves fall into these mental ruts. Those ingrained thought patterns that just hold us back. Now, the first and probably the most common of these ruts is what we can call the rigidity trap. It's basically how our brains get stuck in one gear, totally unable to shift when the road changes. This trap actually has a scientific name. It's called cognitive rigidity, and all it really means is the inability to update your beliefs when new information comes along. It's essentially trying to see the world in black and white when, let's face it, it's filled with color. And you can really see the difference between the two mindsets here. The rigid thinker, they find comfort in being certain. They're always on the hunt for that single right answer. Their first instinct is to defend what they already believe. But the flexible thinker, well, they're driven by curiosity. They explore all the possibilities, they adapt to new data, and they're constantly asking, what if? And this rigidity, this stuck in a rut thinking, leads directly to our first bad habit. And it's one that pretty much all of us are guilty of. It's the impulse reaction. Think about it. You know this feeling. A trigger happens. Maybe it's a frustrating email or a comment you see online. Then, bam, an automatic emotional response just takes over. And before you even know what you're doing, you've reacted, all without ever stopping to think. It's a pure chain reaction that lets your emotions take the wheel. And here is the absolutely crucial part. Every single time we have that knee-jerk reaction, we are literally bypassing the part of our brain that's responsible for critical thinking and learning. We're not growing, we're just reinforcing an old, unhelpful mental habit. Okay, now for our second habit. This one is a little more subtle, but believe me, it is just as damaging. Let's call it the confidence illusion. This illusion, it all stems from a lack of something called metacognition. Now, that sounds like a complicated word, but it's really simple. It's just the ability to think about your own thinking. It's asking yourself, hey, why do I believe this? How do I actually know this is true? Without that little bit of self-reflection, we can become dangerously overconfident. The ancient philosopher Socrates was onto this thousands of years ago. This famous quote, "It's not about being ignorant, it's about having the intellectual humility to recognize the limits of your own knowledge." And that right there is the foundation of metacognition. In modern psychology, this idea has a name. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a cognitive bias where people with low ability in some area mistakenly think their skill is way higher than it actually is. Put simply, they don't know enough to know they don't know enough. This just illustrates the problem perfectly. For people who aren't great at something, there's often this huge gap between their actual skill and their perceived skill. And this dangerous overconfidence becomes a massive barrier to seeing their own flaws, asking for feedback, and, most importantly, learning anything new. Okay, so we've identified the traps, but here's the good news, right? They're just habits, and habits can be broken. So let's talk about how to actually become a better, more flexible thinker. So, what are the antidotes? Well, to fight those impulse reactions, just pause. Create a little space between the trigger and your response. To fight the confidence illusion, start to question your own certainty. Ask yourself, how could I be wrong about this? Actively go out and find different perspectives. And finally, and this one is the big one, embrace the idea that you might be wrong. See it not as a failure, but as an opportunity to learn. Because that is the ultimate takeaway here. The goal isn't to build a fortress of beliefs and then defend it to the death. The real goal is to be constantly learning, constantly updating, and constantly refining your understanding of the world. So I'll leave you with this. What is one belief you hold? It could be about your work, your relationships, anything that you've never truly questioned. Think about it and start there.